You have exactly 10 seconds to explain why you're holding my briefcase. The deep, commanding voice froze everyone on Bampo Bridge. Mary's heart pounded as a circle of black-suited bodyguards surrounded her. In front of them stood one of the most feared men in South Korea, young billionaire Lee Ji-hoon. She tightened her grip on the black leather briefcase and looked him straight in the eyes. "I wasn't stealing it," she said calmly. "I was trying to return it." For a brief moment, silence filled the bridge. Then Lee Ji-hoon asked a question that left even his own bodyguards speechless. "What is your name?" Neither of them knew that this chance meeting would begin a journey of love, sacrifice, betrayal, and destiny that would change their lives forever. Welcome to Afrokorea Seoul Stories. If you love heartwarming African-Korean romance, emotional twists, unforgettable characters, and inspiring endings, you've come to the right place. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support helps us bring you more original Afrokorea Seoul stories every week. Now settle in. And let's begin today's unforgettable story. The sun had only just begun to rise over Seoul, casting a golden glow across the Han River. Office workers hurried toward buses and subway stations, their footsteps echoing across Bampo Bridge. Among them walked Mary, a hardworking young Nigerian woman in her mid-20s. She had moved to South Korea with dreams of building a better future. Life had not been easy, but she refused to let disappointment steal her kindness or her hope. As she crossed the bridge on her way to work, something caught her eye. Resting beside the railing was a sleek black leather briefcase. Mary stopped. She looked around carefully. "Excuse me," she called. "Did anyone lose a briefcase?" People glanced at her, shook their heads, and continued on their way. She waited another minute, hoping someone would return looking for it. No one did. Taking a slow breath, she picked up the briefcase. "I'll find the owner," she whispered to herself. She had no idea that the decision to return a stranger's lost briefcase would place her directly in the path of one of South Korea's most powerful billionaires, and change her life forever. Mary had barely taken a few more steps when the quiet morning was interrupted by the sound of tires screeching to a halt. A convoy of black luxury vehicles pulled up beside Bampo Bridge. Within seconds, several men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the area with intense urgency. "There!" one of them shouted, pointing at the briefcase in Mary's hand. The bodyguards hurried toward her. "Miss, where did you get that briefcase?" one asked firmly. Mary remained calm despite the sudden attention. "I found it beside the bridge railing," she answered. "I was looking for its owner." The men exchanged uncertain glances. Just then, the rear door of the last limousine opened. A tall, sharply dressed young man stepped out, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and a long black overcoat. His expression was calm, but his presence commanded immediate respect. Everyone lowered their heads. "Chairman Lee," they greeted. Mary realized this was none other than Lee Ji-hoon, the billionaire whose companies were known across South Korea. Newspapers described him as brilliant, disciplined, and impossible to deceive. He walked toward her without saying a word. His eyes settled on the briefcase. "You found it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Mary replied. "You opened it?" She shook her head. "No. You never wondered what was inside?" Mary smiled politely. "I did. But curiosity doesn't give me the right to touch what belongs to someone else." For the first time that morning, Ji-hoon's cold expression softened ever so slightly. His chief bodyguard stepped closer and whispered, "Chairman, we've confirmed that's your briefcase." Ji-hoon accepted it from Mary and unlocked it. Inside were important company documents, a laptop, and several confidential files. Everything was exactly as he had left it. He closed the case and looked back at Mary. "You could have taken everything," he said. Mary smiled gently. "My parents taught me that a good name is worth more than wealth." Those words lingered in Ji-hoon's mind. No one had spoken to him with such simple honesty in years. He reached into his coat pocket and took out a gold-colored business card. He held it out to her. "If you ever need help," he said, "call me." Mary looked at the card for a moment before accepting it. "Thank you," she replied. She slipped the card into her bag, unaware that this small act of kindness had earned the respect of one of the most powerful men in Seoul. As she walked away, Ji-hoon watched her disappear into the morning crowd. Something told him that this would not be the last time their paths would cross. Mary tucked the business card safely into her bag and hurried toward the subway station. She was already running late. Today was important. After months of searching for a stable job, she had finally been invited to the last round of interviews at Hanul Group, one of Seoul's fastest-growing companies. It was an opportunity she couldn't afford to lose. As the train sped through the city, Mary silently prayed, "God, I've worked hard for this. Please let today be the beginning of something better." 20 minutes later, she arrived at the company's gleaming headquarters. The glass skyscraper towered over the surrounding buildings, reflecting the bright morning sky. Inside the elegant lobby, dozens of applicants waited nervously. Some reviewed their resumes. Others rehearsed interview answers under their breath. Mary took a deep breath and reminded herself why she had come to South Korea. To build a future through honesty, hard work, and determination. A receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning. Your name, please." "Mary." After checking the list, the receptionist handed her a visitor's badge. "The interview will begin shortly. Please wait on the 35th floor." Mary thanked her and stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a spacious waiting area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seoul skyline. The applicants sat quietly, each hoping to be chosen. Then, without warning, the atmosphere changed. Employees straightened their posture. Managers hurried into the hallway. Security personnel moved into position. "The chairman is here," someone whispered. Mary looked toward the entrance. Her eyes widened. Walking confidently through the corridor was the same man she had met only an hour earlier on Bampo Bridge. Lee Ji-hoon. He was no ordinary businessman. He was the chairman of Hanul Group. Ji-hoon's gaze swept across the waiting room. For a brief moment, his eyes met Mary's. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He hadn't expected to see the honest young woman from the bridge again so soon. Without saying a word, he continued walking. The applicants whispered among themselves. "Did you see that?" The chairman looked at her. "Do they know each other?" Mary ignored the whispers, but her heart beat a little faster. She had come here to earn a job on her own merits. The last thing she wanted was special treatment. Meanwhile, inside the executive boardroom, Ji-hoon placed the recovered briefcase on the table. His assistant entered. "Chairman, the interview panel is ready." Ji-hoon nodded thoughtfully before asking a question that caught his assistant off guard. The applicant named Mary. "Yes, sir." "Which department is she applying for?" The assistant checked the list. "International Relations, Chairman." Ji-hoon looked out at the skyline. "Good," he said quietly. "Let's see whether her honesty is matched by her ability." Mary's name was the seventh to be called. She rose from her seat, smoothed the sleeves of her navy blue blazer, and whispered a short prayer before walking into the interview room. 5 senior executives sat behind a long polished table. At the center was an empty chair. Mary assumed it belonged to another executive who hadn't arrived yet. "Good morning," she greeted politely, bowing respectfully. "Good morning, Miss Mary," the panel replied. The interview began with straightforward questions. "Tell us about yourself. Why do you want to work at Hanul Group? What experience do you have working with people from different cultures?" Mary answered each question with confidence and sincerity. She admitted that she didn't know everything, but she emphasized her willingness to learn, her strong work ethic, and her belief that integrity was the foundation of lasting success. The panel members nodded with interest. Just as the final question was about to be asked, the door opened. The room fell silent. Lee Ji-hoon walked in. Every interviewer immediately stood. "Chairman." Ji-hoon acknowledged them with a slight nod before taking the empty seat at the center of the table. Mary was surprised, but she kept her composure. Ji-hoon looked at her for a moment. "So," he said calmly, "we meet again." "Yes, Chairman Lee," Mary replied respectfully. One of the executives smiled nervously. "It seems you've already met." Ji-hoon didn't explain. Instead, he folded his hands on the table. "I have one question, Miss Mary." The room became completely quiet. "This morning you found a briefcase that could have changed your life financially. You chose to return it without expecting a reward. Why?" Mary thought for a moment before answering. "My parents always told me that money earned the wrong way never brings peace. If I had kept something that wasn't mine, I might have become richer for a day, but I would have been poorer in character for the rest of my life. No one spoke. Even the executives exchanged thoughtful glances. Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair. Interesting answer. He closed the file in front of him. One final question. Mary nodded. If you don't get this job today, what will you do tomorrow? She smiled gently. I'll keep trying. The chairman raised an eyebrow. You won't give up? Mary shook her head. No, sir. Dreams don't come true because life is easy. They come true because we refuse to quit. For the first time in years, a genuine smile appeared on Lee Ji-hoon's face. It was small, but everyone in the room noticed it. The executives looked at one another in astonishment. No one could remember the last time the chairman had smiled during an interview. When Mary left the room, she had no idea what decision the panel would make. Inside, one executive broke the silence. Chairman, should we move on to the next candidate? Ji-hoon looked at Mary's resume one more time. Then he quietly said words that stunned everyone around the table. I have a different position in mind for her. Mary sat quietly in the waiting area, watching one applicant after another leave the interview room. Some looked relieved. Others looked disappointed. She tried not to overthink what had happened inside. The chairman smiled. One applicant whispered. I've never seen that before, another replied. Mary simply lowered her eyes. She didn't want to become the center of attention. A few minutes later, the receptionist approached her. Miss Mary. Yes. The chairman would like to see you in his office. The waiting room fell silent. Every applicant turned to look at her. The chairman. Someone murmured in disbelief. Mary's heart skipped a beat. She followed the receptionist down a quiet hallway lined with elegant artwork and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Finally, they stopped outside a pair of large wooden doors. The receptionist smiled. You may go in. Mary took a deep breath and knocked. Come in. She gently opened the door. Lee Ji-hoon stood by the window, his hands in the pockets of his tailored suit. The skyline of Seoul stretched behind him. He turned to face her. Please have a seat. Thank you, Chairman Lee. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Then Ji-hoon broke the silence. I've read your resume carefully. Mary waited quietly. You've worked several part-time jobs since arriving in Korea. Yes, sir. You've also volunteered to help international students adjust to life here. Whenever I had time, she answered with a smile. Ji-hoon nodded thoughtfully. This morning you proved your honesty. During the interview, you proved your determination. He walked to his desk and placed a folder in front of her. I don't want to offer you the position you applied for. Mary's smile faded slightly. I see. Before she could stand to leave, Ji-hoon continued. Because I believe you're capable of something greater. He slid the folder toward her. I want you to become my executive assistant for international projects. Mary stared at him in surprise. Me? Yes. She opened the folder with trembling hands. The salary was far beyond anything she had imagined. There were opportunities for professional training, language development, and international travel. She looked up almost speechless. Chairman Lee, are you sure? Ji-hoon's expression remained calm. I don't hire people simply because they're qualified. He paused. I hire people I can trust. Mary felt her eyes fill with tears. She had come to Seoul hoping for a chance. Instead, she had been offered a future. I won't disappoint you, she said sincerely. I believe you. As Mary signed the employment documents, neither of them noticed a woman standing outside the office. She wore an expensive designer suit and watched through the partially open door with narrowed eyes. Her name was Han Soo-jin, the chairman's ambitious executive secretary. She had spent 5 years earning Lee Ji-hoon's trust. Now a stranger had walked into his life in a single morning. Clenching her fists, Soo-jin whispered to herself, This isn't over, Mary. And at that moment a quiet rivalry began. One that would test Mary's courage, integrity, and place beside the man whose life she had changed forever. Mary barely slept that night. The employment contract lay neatly on the small desk in her apartment, and every time she looked at it, she smiled. Alhamdulillah, she whispered. Thank you, God. She immediately called her mother in Nigeria. When her mother answered, Mary's voice trembled with excitement. Mama, I got the job. On the other end of the line, there was a brief silence before joyful tears filled her mother's voice. I knew your honesty would open a door that no one could close. Mary smiled through her own tears. I promise I'll make you proud. The next morning, she arrived at Hanul Group nearly an hour early. She wore a simple cream-colored blouse, a black pencil skirt, and neatly tied her hair back. She wanted to make a good first impression. The receptionist greeted her warmly. Welcome, Miss Mary. We've been expecting you. She was escorted to the executive floor, where the atmosphere was calm, elegant, and professional. As the elevator doors opened, dozens of employees looked up. Some smiled politely. Others whispered quietly. So that's the new executive assistant. The chairman hired her personally. I heard she started yesterday. Mary ignored the whispers and focused on the work ahead. Just then, a confident woman in a tailored navy suit approached her. It was Han Soo-jin. She smiled politely, but her eyes were cold. So, you're Mary? Yes. It's nice to meet you. I'm Han Soo-jin, the chairman's senior secretary. She extended her hand. Mary shook it with a warm smile. I look forward to learning from you. Soo-jin smiled back, though there was no warmth behind it. I'm sure you do. A few moments later, Ji-hoon's assistant appeared. The chairman is ready to see Miss Mary. Mary followed him into the executive office. Lee Ji-hoon looked up from a stack of documents. Good morning, Mary. Good morning, Chairman Lee. He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. From today onward, you'll be working closely with me on international partnerships. The workload will be demanding. I'm ready. Ji-hoon nodded. Good. Your first assignment is simple. He handed her a folder. I need a complete report on our upcoming partnership with a Nigerian technology company. The meeting is tomorrow morning. Mary's eyes brightened. I'll have it ready before the end of today. As she turned to leave, Ji-hoon added, and Mary. She looked back. Welcome to Hanul Group. A genuine smile spread across her face. Thank you, Chairman. Outside the office, Han Soo-jin watched the interaction from a distance. She noticed something that no one else had. For the second time in 2 days, Lee Ji-hoon had smiled. And that frightened her more than anything, because she realized Mary wasn't just becoming another employee. She was slowly becoming someone the chairman trusted. Mary spent the entire day reviewing reports, researching international markets, and preparing the presentation for the Nigerian technology partnership. She checked every detail twice. She wanted her work to speak for itself. Late in the evening, she placed the completed report on Lee Ji-hoon's desk. Chairman Lee, she said respectfully, the report is finished. Ji-hoon looked up from his laptop. So soon? Yes, sir. He opened the file and began reading. The office became completely silent. Mary stood patiently waiting. Several minutes passed. Finally, Ji-hoon closed the folder. This is excellent. Mary smiled. I'm glad it meets your expectations. It exceeds them. He looked at her thoughtfully. You didn't just translate the information. You identified opportunities and potential risks. Mary nodded. I wanted to understand the project, not just summarize it. For the first time since she joined the company, Ji-hoon gave a small laugh. I was right about you. Just then Ji-hoon's phone rang. His expression grew serious as he listened. I understand, he replied before ending the call. He looked at Mary. My grandmother is hosting a family dinner tomorrow evening. Mary smiled politely, unsure why he was telling her. She insists that I bring someone from work who has impressed me. Mary blinked in surprise. You want me to come? It's only a dinner, Ji-hoon said calmly. She enjoys meeting people from different backgrounds, and I think you'd make a good impression. Mary hesitated. I don't want anyone to misunderstand. I'll explain that you're my executive assistant. She thought for a moment before nodding. If you're sure it's appropriate, I'd be honored. Good. I'll pick you up at 6 tomorrow evening. After Mary left the office, Han Soo-jin stepped out from behind a nearby corridor. She had heard enough. Her face tightened with disbelief. The chairman has never invited an employee to his grandmother's home, she whispered. That night she made a phone call. I need you to find out everything about Mary, she said in a low voice. I want to know where she lives, where she studied, who her friends are. Everything. As she ended the call, a faint smile appeared on her face. If Mary has even one weakness, Sujin murmured, I'll find it. Meanwhile, across the city, Mary stood by the window of her apartment, looking at the lights of Seoul. She had no idea that accepting a simple dinner invitation would draw her into the complicated world of the Lee family. A world filled with wealth, expectations, hidden rivalries, and secrets that could change her life forever. The following evening, Mary stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, taking one last look at herself. She had chosen a simple emerald green dress with a modest design. Her hair was neatly styled, and she wore only a pair of small pearl earrings. She wanted to look elegant without drawing unnecessary attention. At exactly 6 o'clock, a black luxury sedan stopped outside her building. Lee Ji-hoon stepped out and opened the rear door for her. Good evening, Mary. Good evening, Chairman Lee. As the car drove through Seoul's illuminated streets, Mary admired the city lights while Ji-hoon quietly reviewed a few documents on his tablet. After a few minutes, he looked up. There's something you should know. Mary turned toward him. My grandmother is kind, but she's very observant. She can usually tell what kind of person someone is within minutes. Mary smiled. I'll just be myself. Ji-hoon nodded. That's exactly why I invited you. Half an hour later, the car entered the gates of the Lee family's private estate. The mansion was breathtaking, surrounded by beautifully maintained gardens, stone pathways, and centuries-old pine trees. Mary took a slow breath. This place is incredible. Ji-hoon smiled faintly. My grandmother says a home should make people feel welcome, not intimidated. A housekeeper greeted them and led them into a spacious dining room. At the far end of the room sat an elegant elderly woman with silver hair and bright, gentle eyes. The moment she saw Ji-hoon, she smiled warmly. Then her attention shifted to Mary. So, she said with a pleasant laugh, this must be the young lady who returned my grandson's briefcase. Mary looked surprised. You know about that? My grandson rarely talks about people, the elderly woman replied. Yet he spoke about your honesty. Ji-hoon cleared his throat awkwardly. Grandmother. She chuckled. What? It's true. Mary bowed respectfully. It's an honor to meet you, ma'am. The elderly woman reached out and gently held Mary's hands. My name is Lee Sun-young, but you may call me grandmother if you're comfortable. Mary smiled warmly. Thank you, grandmother. The old woman's face lit up with happiness. Dinner was filled with laughter and easy conversation. Grandmother Sun-young asked Mary about her family in Nigeria, her childhood, her dreams, and what she loved most about living in Korea. Mary answered sincerely, never pretending to be someone she wasn't. At one point, Grandmother Sun-young quietly watched the way Mary served water to everyone before serving herself. She noticed how Mary thanked every member of the household staff. She noticed how Mary listened more than she spoke. After dinner, while Mary stepped into the garden to admire the flowers, Grandmother Sun-young turned to Ji-hoon with a knowing smile. She's different. Ji-hoon remained silent. His grandmother continued. Money attracts many people. Character attracts very few. She looked directly at her grandson. Don't let a good person walk out of your life because you're too afraid to open your heart. Ji-hoon didn't answer. But for the first time in years, he found himself wondering if his grandmother was right. Neither of them realized that from the upstairs balcony, someone had been watching the entire evening. A young woman folded her arms, her expression dark with jealousy. She had grown up believing she would one day marry Lee Ji-hoon. Now an unexpected guest named Mary had become the center of everyone's attention. And she was determined to make sure that dinner would be the last happy moment Mary ever enjoyed at the Lee family estate. As the dinner came to an end, Grandmother Sun-young insisted that everyone enjoy tea in the garden. Soft lanterns illuminated the stone pathways, and the fragrance of blooming flowers filled the cool evening air. Mary felt at peace. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, she felt as though she truly belonged somewhere. Mary, Grandmother Sun-young said with a smile, would you help me pick a few flowers for tomorrow's prayer room? I'd be happy to. The two women strolled slowly through the garden, talking about family, faith, and the importance of kindness. Watching from a distance, the young woman on the balcony clenched her jaw. Her name was Choi Uneseo, the daughter of one of Hanul Group's largest shareholders. She had known Ji-hoon since childhood. Their families had always assumed they would marry one day. But tonight, Ji-hoon's attention had been on someone else. I won't lose to her, Uneseo whispered. A few minutes later, Mary excused herself to use the restroom. As she walked down the quiet hallway, she noticed a housekeeper searching anxiously. Is everything all right? Mary asked. The chairman's grandmother's jade bracelet is missing, the housekeeper replied nervously. She always wears it during family dinners. Mary immediately joined the search. They checked the sitting room, the dining room, and the garden. Nothing. Suddenly, another maid gasped. I found it. Everyone turned. The jade bracelet was lying inside Mary's handbag. The room fell silent. Mary stared at it in disbelief. That's impossible, she said. I've never seen that bracelet before. Several guests exchanged suspicious looks. Uneseo stepped forward with a look of false concern. This is very unfortunate, she said softly. Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. Mary shook her head. No. Someone put it there. One of the security guards spoke firmly. Miss Mary, we'll need you to remain here until we understand what happened. Before anyone could say another word, Lee Ji-hoon entered the room. His eyes moved from the bracelet to Mary's face. He saw fear, but he didn't see guilt. What happened? He asked. A guest quickly explained that the missing bracelet had been found in Mary's handbag. The room waited for Ji-hoon's reaction. Instead of accusing her, he calmly walked over and picked up the bracelet. Then he looked at the security team. Check every security camera in the house. But Chairman, one guard began. Ji-hoon's voice became firm. Now. Uneseo's confident smile disappeared. For the first time that evening, she looked genuinely nervous. She hadn't expected Ji-hoon to trust Mary without hesitation. As the security team rushed to the surveillance room, Mary stood quietly, her heart racing. She knew she was innocent. The question was whether the truth would be uncovered before her reputation was destroyed. Upstairs, hidden from everyone else, Uneseo whispered to herself. The cameras. I didn't think about the cameras. For the first time since setting her trap, she realized her perfect plan might be falling apart. The atmosphere inside the mansion was tense. No one spoke as the head of security hurried into the surveillance room with his team. Mary stood quietly, her hands clasped together. She kept praying silently. Lord, let the truth come to light. Lee Ji-hoon stood beside her. He did not say much, but his presence gave her strength. Across the room, Choi Uneseo tried to remain calm, though her heart was pounding. A few minutes later, the head of security returned with the laptop. Chairman, he said respectfully, we've reviewed the footage. Play it. Everyone gathered around the screen. The recording showed Mary leaving her handbag on a chair, as she helped grandmother Sun-young in the garden. Moments later, another figure quietly entered the room. The woman looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she slipped the missing jade bracelet into Mary's handbag. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Pause the video, Ji-hoon ordered. The image froze. The woman's face was perfectly clear. It was Choi Uneseo. Grandmother Sun-young looked at her in disbelief. Uneseo, why? Tears filled Uneseo's eyes as every gaze turned toward her. There is no misunderstanding anymore, Ji-hoon said firmly. You tried to destroy an innocent person's reputation. Uneseo lowered her head. I was jealous, she admitted through tears. Everyone kept praising her. Even you. The room fell silent. Grandmother Sun-young sighed sadly. Jealousy doesn't only hurt others, Uneseo. It destroys the person who carries it. Unable to face anyone, Uneseo broke down crying. Ji-hoon turned toward the head of security. Escort Miss Choi to the front gate. She is no longer welcome in this house until she reflects on her actions. The guards respectfully led her away. As the doors closed behind her, Ji-hoon turned to Mary. I'm sorry. Mary looked surprised. You have nothing to apologize for, Chairman. I invited you here. You were embarrassed because of my family's conflict. Mary smiled gently. The truth came out. That's what matters. Grandmother Sun-young walked over and took Mary's hands. My child, Thank you for showing grace even after being falsely accused. She slipped the jade bracelet onto her own wrist and continued. Tonight, you taught everyone in this house that dignity is stronger than revenge. Several family members nodded in agreement. For the first time in many years, the Lee family had witnessed someone respond to humiliation with patience instead of anger. As Mary prepared to leave the mansion, Ji-hoon walked her to the waiting car. The night was quiet. A cool breeze rustled the trees. Just before Mary got into the car, Ji-hoon spoke. Mary. She turned. I don't want our conversations to be limited to the office anymore. Mary looked at him curiously. What do you mean? A faint smile appeared on his face. Would you have dinner with me this weekend? Not as my employee, but as someone I'd like to know better? Mary felt her heart skip a beat. She had never expected those words. For a moment she simply smiled. Then she gave her answer. Yes, I'd like that. Neither of them noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Inside, a man lowered a pair of binoculars. He made a phone call. The chairman is getting close to the Nigerian woman, he said quietly. A cold voice answered from the other end. Then it's time to begin the second phase. The call ended. The man started the engine and disappeared into the darkness, unaware that a far more dangerous enemy had just entered Mary and Ji-hoon's lives. Saturday arrived with clear blue skies over Seoul. For the first time in years, Lee Ji-hoon found himself looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. At exactly 4 o'clock, he parked outside Mary's apartment. When Mary stepped outside, Ji-hoon was momentarily speechless. She wore a simple sky blue dress, her hair neatly styled, and a warm smile that seemed brighter than the afternoon sun. You look wonderful, Ji-hoon said. Mary smiled shyly. Thank you, Chairman Lee. He chuckled. We're not at the office today. Mary laughed softly. Then, Ji-hoon. The sound of his name on her lips made him smile. Their first stop was a quiet cafe overlooking the Han River. There were no reporters, no executives, and no bodyguards, just two people getting to know each other. They talked for hours. Mary shared stories about growing up in Nigeria, her close relationship with her parents, and the dreams that had brought her to South Korea. Ji-hoon spoke about the pressure of leading Hanul Group after his father's passing, and how loneliness had quietly become part of his life. I've spent so many years building this company, he admitted, that I forgot how to build friendships. Mary looked at him kindly. It's never too late to start. As they laughed together, neither of them noticed a man sitting in a parked car across the street. He quietly raised a camera and snapped several photographs. One picture showed Ji-hoon smiling. Another captured Mary laughing. He immediately sent the images to an unknown contact. Minutes later his phone buzzed. Target confirmed. Continue surveillance. Meanwhile, at Hanul Group headquarters, a confidential board meeting was underway. Several senior directors sat around a polished conference table. One of them, Executive Director Park Do-won, closed the meeting room door before speaking. Chairman Lee is becoming distracted. Another executive frowned. What are you suggesting? Park leaned forward. If he continues making emotional decisions, he'll become vulnerable. No one in the room knew that Park Do-won had secretly been manipulating company contracts for years, stealing millions through fake overseas accounts. As long as Ji-hoon remained focused only on business, Park's crimes stayed hidden. But Mary's appointment to international projects had already uncovered small inconsistencies in financial reports. She didn't realize it yet, but she was getting dangerously close to discovering the truth. That evening, after Ji-hoon drove Mary home, she opened the project files he had given her to review before Monday's meeting. As she compared several international invoices, something caught her attention. The same foreign consulting company had been paid 3 times for what appeared to be the same project. Mary frowned. That can't be right. She reached for a notebook and began checking every transaction carefully. Without realizing it, she had just taken the first step toward uncovering a corporate conspiracy worth billions of won. And somewhere else in Seoul, Executive Director Park Do-won looked at a photograph of Mary on his desk. His expression was cold. If she keeps digging. He slowly closed the file. She won't live long enough to finish. Mary spent most of Sunday reviewing the financial records. The more she compared the invoices, payment dates, and project reports, the more uneasy she became. Several transactions didn't match. Some companies had received large payments, yet there was no evidence that the work had ever been completed. She rubbed her eyes. Maybe I'm missing something, she whispered. Instead of making accusations, Mary carefully organized her observations into a separate notebook. She believed every concern should be backed by facts. Early Monday morning, she arrived at Hanul Group before sunrise. As she stepped out of the elevator, she noticed someone standing outside the executive office. It was Lee Ji-hoon. You came in early, he said with a smile. So did you. He noticed the notebook in her hands. What's that? Mary hesitated. I found a few irregularities in some international project files. I could be mistaken, so I wanted to verify everything before saying anything. Ji-hoon's expression became serious. You did the right thing. He gestured toward his office. Let's review them together after the board meeting. Mary nodded. Yes. Ji-hoon. For a moment, neither of them realized they had both smiled. From across the hallway, Han Soo-ji noticed the exchange. Unlike before, she no longer saw Mary as a rival. After the incident at the mansion, she had come to respect Mary's honesty. Still, something about the atmosphere in the building made her uneasy. Later that afternoon, Ji-hoon and Mary sat together in his office, carefully reviewing every document. After nearly an hour, Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair. You're right. Mary looked up. So there really are irregularities? There are. He closed the file. And someone has gone to great lengths to hide them. Neither of them noticed the tiny listening device hidden beneath a decorative cabinet. Every word they spoke was being transmitted to another office. Executive Director Park Do-won listened in silence. His face darkened. So, he switched off the receiver. They know. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Mary stayed behind to organize the evidence. The office floor was almost empty. As she gathered the files, the lights suddenly went out. The hallway fell into darkness. Mary froze. Hello. No answer. Then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. Her heartbeat quickened. She reached for her phone, but before she could unlock it, a deep voice echoed through the darkness. If you value your life. The footsteps stopped only a few meters away. Stop looking into those files. Silence. Then the emergency lights flickered on. The hallway was empty. No one was there. Only Mary's notebook lay on the floor where it had fallen from her hands. She looked around, shaken. Whoever had spoken knew exactly what she had discovered, and they were willing to threaten her to keep it secret. Far away, inside his office, Park Do-won looked out over the lights of Seoul. He slowly picked up his phone. Phase 3 begins tonight, he said. This time. He paused. Make sure she never gets another chance to investigate. Mary's hands trembled as she gathered the scattered documents from the floor. The mysterious voice echoed in her mind. If you value your life, stop looking into those files. She took a deep breath and quickly called Lee Ji-hoon. He answered on the first ring. Mary. Ji-hoon. Someone was here. His voice immediately became serious. What happened? She explained everything, the power outage, the footsteps, and the warning. Stay exactly where you are, he said firmly. I'm coming. Less than 15 minutes later, Ji-hoon's car pulled into the underground parking garage. He rushed into the building with 2 trusted security officers. When he saw Mary standing safely outside his office, relief washed over his face. Are you hurt? Mary shook her head. No, just frightened. Ji-hoon looked around the hallway. Review every security camera from the last hour, he instructed the officers. Yes, Chairman. Within minutes, they discovered something disturbing. Whoever had entered the executive floor had disabled one camera after another. The person's face was never captured. This wasn't random, Ji-hoon said quietly. They knew exactly where the cameras were. The next morning, Ji-hoon called an emergency executive meeting. Without revealing everything Mary had found, he announced that an independent audit of every international project would begin immediately. The boardroom fell silent. Only one person struggled to hide his panic. Park Do-won. As the meeting ended, he slipped into an empty office and made another phone call. The chairman has started an audit. A rough voice answered. Then we'll remove the evidence. And Mary. There was a brief pause. She's becoming a problem. That evening Mary stayed late again. But this time Ji-hoon refused to let her work alone. I'll drive you home, he insisted. You don't have to. I know. He smiled gently. But I want to. As they drove through the rain-soaked streets of Seoul, the city lights reflected across the windshield. For the first time in days, Mary began to relax. Then, a black SUV suddenly accelerated from a side street. Ji-hoon! Mary shouted. The SUV swerved directly toward them. Ji-hoon reacted instantly, turning the steering wheel sharply. The vehicles missed each other by only a few centimeters. The SUV sped away into the night without stopping. Ji-hoon brought the car safely to the roadside. Both of them sat in stunned silence. That wasn't an accident, Mary whispered. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. No. He looked into the rearview mirror, watching the disappearing taillights. Someone wants to scare us. His expression hardened. Or something even worse. Unbeknownst to them, the dashboard camera had captured part of the SUV's license plate. It wasn't enough to identify the driver. But it was enough to give investigators their first real clue. For the first time, the people hunting Mary had made a mistake. And Ji-hoon intended to make them pay for it. The following morning, Ji-hoon arrived at Hanul Group earlier than usual. He carried a small memory card taken from the dashboard camera of his car. Inside the company's private security office, the footage was displayed on a large screen. The black SUV appeared for only a few seconds before disappearing into traffic. The head of security paused the video. Chairman, we managed to enhance part of the license plate. Ji-hoon leaned forward. Can we identify the owner? Not yet. But we've already sent the information to the police. It should help narrow the search. Ji-hoon nodded. Keep this investigation confidential. I don't want whoever is behind this to know we're getting closer. Meanwhile, Mary sat quietly in her office, trying to focus on work. But the events of the previous night kept replaying in her mind. A gentle knock came at her door. Come in. To her surprise, Han Soo-jin entered carrying 2 cups of hot coffee. Mary stood up. Thank you. Soo-jin handed her a cup and smiled awkwardly. I owe you an apology. Mary looked at her with surprise. For what? I judged you before I knew you. She lowered her eyes. I let my pride cloud my judgment. Mary smiled warmly. Everyone deserves a second chance. Soo-jin let out a quiet breath of relief. Thank you. Just then her expression became serious. I also came to warn you. Mary frowned. Warn me. I've worked in this company for years, Soo-jin said in a low voice. Something isn't right. People are acting nervous. Files are disappearing. Conversations stop whenever someone walks into the room. Mary's heart sank. So, you've noticed it too. Soo-jin nodded. Be careful. Whoever is behind this is desperate. That afternoon, Mary and Ji-hoon continued reviewing old project records stored in the company archives. Most of the shelves contained ordinary business documents. Then Mary noticed a dusty storage box hidden behind several binders. There shouldn't be anything back there, she said. She pulled it out carefully. Inside were old financial ledgers and a sealed envelope marked, Confidential, do not destroy. Ji-hoon opened the envelope. His expression changed instantly. These were original payment records from years earlier. Unlike the altered digital files, these documents clearly showed that millions of won had been diverted into shell companies connected to someone inside Hanul Group. Mary looked at the signature at the bottom of one page. Her eyes widened. Ji-hoon. He followed her gaze. The signature belonged to Executive Director Park Do-won. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ji-hoon closed the file. We've found the proof. Just then, the archive door slammed shut. The lights went out. A loud click echoed through the room. Mary rushed to the door and tried the handle. It wouldn't move. They had been locked inside. From the hallway outside, an unseen figure smiled. If they never leave that archive, the person whispered, the evidence disappears with them. And suddenly, smoke began to seep in through the air vents. Thin streams of smoke curled through the air vents, growing thicker with every passing second. Mary covered her mouth with her sleeve. Ji-hoon. There's smoke. Ji-hoon immediately understood the danger. This wasn't an accident. He grabbed his phone and dialed the head of security. No signal. The jammer, he muttered. Someone is blocking communication. The smoke spread quickly through the archive room. Mary's eyes began to water. She looked toward the shelves filled with decades of company records. Those documents. Ji-hoon shook his head. Your life is more important than any file. He removed his suit jacket, soaked it with water from a small emergency dispenser near the entrance, and handed it to Mary. Cover your nose and mouth. She did as he instructed. Together they searched every wall for another exit. There! Mary shouted. Half hidden behind a row of old filing cabinets was a narrow steel door marked emergency exit. Ji-hoon pulled the handle. Locked. He tried again with all his strength. It refused to move. The smoke grew thicker. Mary began coughing. Outside the archive, Han Soo-jin noticed a faint smell of burning. She frowned. That's strange. Following the smell, she hurried toward the records department. When she reached the corridor, she saw smoke escaping from beneath the archive door. Her face turned pale. Chairman. She pulled the handle. Locked. Without hesitation, she slammed the emergency alarm. The piercing siren echoed throughout Hanul Group. Employees rushed from their offices in confusion. The head of security sprinted toward the archives with 2 emergency responders. Using a heavy rescue tool, they forced the door open. Fresh air rushed inside. Ji-hoon supported Mary as they stumbled into the hallway, coughing but alive. Paramedics immediately checked them for smoke inhalation. Chairman, are you all right? The head of security asked. Ji-hoon nodded. Then he looked at the sealed evidence folder still clutched tightly in Mary's hands. Even in the middle of the fire, she hadn't let go of it. He looked at her with admiration. You protected the evidence. Mary managed a weak smile. I knew we'd need it. At that moment, the fire investigation team arrived. After inspecting the room, the lead investigator addressed Ji-hoon. Chairman Lee, this fire was deliberately set. The hallway fell silent. It was arson. Across town, Park Do-won watched a breaking news report on television. The headline read, Fire at Hanul Group Headquarters. Chairman safe. He stared at the screen in disbelief. They survived. His phone rang. The distorted voice on the other end sounded irritated. You said the problem would be solved. Park clenched his jaw. I underestimated them. The voice replied coldly. You don't get another chance to fail. The call ended. Park slowly lowered the phone. For the first time in years, fear replaced his confidence. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Mary sat quietly after receiving treatment. Ji-hoon walked into her room carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. I'm glad you're safe, he said softly. Mary smiled. So am I. He pulled up a chair beside her. This ends now. She looked at him. I've already handed the evidence to the police and to independent auditors. Even if someone destroys every remaining file, copies are already secured. Mary let out a long breath of relief. Neither of them noticed a nurse standing just outside the partially open door. She wasn't a nurse at all. Hidden beneath her uniform was a tiny earpiece. She whispered into it. They've secured the evidence. A cold voice answered. Then we moved to the final stage. The fake nurse quietly walked away before anyone realized she had never belonged in the hospital. The next morning, the atmosphere at Hanul Group was unlike anything the company had experienced before. Police investigators arrived with search warrants. Independent auditors followed close behind. Employees gathered in small groups, whispering as officers entered executive offices and began collecting documents, computers, and financial records. Mary watched from Ji-hoon's office window. It's really happening, she said quietly. Ji-hoon stood beside her. For years, people believed no one could expose the corruption. He looked at Mary. They underestimated one honest person. Just then the office door opened. The head of security entered. Chairman, the investigators have requested your presence. Ji-hoon nodded. I'll be there shortly. Before leaving, he turned to Mary. Stay here until I return. She smiled. I will. Downstairs, investigators questioned Executive Director Park Do-won. He tried to remain calm. I've done nothing wrong. The lead investigator placed several files on the table. These are original financial records. Then another officer placed a laptop beside them. And these are emails recovered from your deleted accounts. Park's expression changed. Finally, the investigator produced a photograph. It showed Park meeting secretly with the owner of one of the shell companies. There is enough evidence to charge you with fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Park's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he realized there was no escape. Meanwhile, Mary received an unexpected visitor. Grandmother Sunyoung entered the office carrying a homemade lunch. I thought you might forget to eat, she said with a warm smile. Mary laughed softly. You're right. I almost did. As they shared lunch together, Grandmother Sunyoung looked at her affectionately. My dear, you've brought something precious back into Ji-hoon's life. Mary tilted her head. What do you mean? Hope. The elderly woman smiled gently. Before you came, he lived only for work. Now, he smiles again. Mary lowered her eyes, feeling her cheeks grow warm. At that moment, Ji-hoon returned. He paused when he saw the two women laughing together. For a brief second, he imagined what it would be like if moments like this became part of his everyday life. Late that afternoon, the police escorted Park Do-won out of Hanul Group in handcuffs. Reporters surrounded the building. Camera flashes lit up the entrance. As Park was led to the police vehicle, he stopped walking. He turned toward the building and saw Mary standing beside Ji-hoon through the glass entrance. Their eyes met. His expression hardened. You think this is over? He muttered. Mary couldn't hear his words, but something in his expression made her uneasy. Just before Park entered the police vehicle, another black sedan sped toward the courthouse convoy. The driver ignored every traffic signal. The police shouted for it to stop. Instead, the sedan accelerated. Ji-hoon instinctively stepped in front of Mary. The speeding vehicle swerved onto the sidewalk. And the chapter ended with the sound of screeching tires echoing across the street. The black sedan sped toward the sidewalk. People screamed and scattered in every direction. Mary! Ji-hoon shouted. Without thinking, he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her behind a concrete safety barrier near the entrance of Hanul Group. The sedan narrowly missed them before crashing into a row of security barricades with a deafening bang. Police officers rushed toward the vehicle with their weapons drawn. Don't move! The driver tried to reverse. He didn't get the chance. Within seconds, the police surrounded the car and pulled him out. As they handcuffed the man, investigators quickly recognized him. He wasn't a random attacker. He was one of the men secretly employed by Park Do-won's criminal network. Park, who was already seated inside the police vehicle, watched in disbelief. His final attempt to silence Mary had failed. Mary slowly stood up. Ji-hoon. I'm fine, he replied, though his shoulder had slammed hard against the concrete barrier. You protected me. I promised I would. For a moment, neither of them cared about the reporters or the police surrounding them. All that mattered was that they were both alive. Grandmother Sunyoung hurried toward them with tears in her eyes. She embraced Mary tightly. My child, thank God you're safe. Mary hugged her back. I'm all right, grandmother. A week later, the investigation was complete. The courts froze the stolen assets connected to Park Do-won's network. Several accomplices were arrested. Hanul Group issued a public statement promising stronger financial oversight and greater transparency. Employees across the company felt a renewed sense of hope. At a special company gathering, Ji-hoon stood before hundreds of employees. I've always believed that intelligence builds companies, he said. He paused and looked toward Mary. But this experience reminded me that integrity keeps them alive. The audience applauded. Then Ji-hoon surprised everyone. Today I'd like to recognize one employee whose honesty, courage, and determination protected this company. He invited Mary onto the stage. The applause grew even louder. Ji-hoon handed her a crystal award engraved with the words, "Integrity inspires greatness." Mary accepted it with tears in her eyes. I only did what I believed was right, she said. Her humility earned another round of applause. That evening, after the celebration ended, Ji-hoon invited Mary to the rooftop garden of Hanul Group. The Seoul skyline glittered beneath the stars. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ji-hoon broke the silence. Mary. Yes. The day we met on Bampo Bridge. I thought I had simply recovered a lost briefcase. He smiled warmly. I didn't realize I was also finding the person who would change my life. Mary felt her heart race. She looked into his eyes. He stepped a little closer. I've tried to ignore my feelings because you're my employee. He took a deep breath. But I can't ignore them anymore. The cool evening breeze swept across the rooftop as Mary waited quietly. Ji-hoon reached into his coat pocket. He wasn't holding a ring. Instead, he held out a single white lily. The first time I visited you in the hospital, I brought white lilies because they reminded me of your strength and kindness. He smiled gently. So tonight, I'd like to ask a simple question. He offered her the flower. Mary, would you allow me to court you? Mary's eyes filled with happy tears. A shy smile spread across her face. She accepted the flower. Then, with a joyful laugh that echoed across the rooftop, she gave him the answer he had been hoping for. Yes, I would. News of Park Do-won's conviction spread quickly across South Korea. For weeks, newspapers praised Hanul Group for confronting corruption instead of hiding it. But inside the company, another story quietly captured everyone's attention. Chairman Lee Ji-hoon was smiling more often. Employees noticed the change immediately. He actually said good morning to us today. I've never seen him laugh during a meeting. Do you think it's because of Mary? The rumors spread through every department. Mary heard them too. She remained professional, treating Ji-hoon with the same respect she had shown on her very first day. At work, they focused on business. Outside the office, they slowly got to know each other. Their relationship grew through long conversations, shared meals, evening walks beside the Han River, and countless moments of quiet understanding. Neither of them wanted to rush. They wanted to build something real. One evening, Ji-hoon invited Mary to his grandmother's home. Grandmother Sun-young welcomed her with the same warm embrace as always. My two favorite people are finally here, she said with a smile. During dinner, Ji-hoon set down his chopsticks. Grandmother, there's something we'd like to tell you. The elderly woman looked from Ji-hoon to Mary. A knowing smile spread across her face. I've been waiting. Ji-hoon laughed. Mary and I are officially together. Grandmother Sun-young clapped her hands with joy. I knew it. She stood up, walked around the table and hugged them both. My home has needed this kind of happiness for a long time. Later that night, after Mary returned to her apartment, her phone rang. It was her mother in Nigeria. My daughter. Mama. I've been praying for you every day. How are you? Mary smiled. I'm happy, Mama. Her mother hesitated before asking gently, is there someone special in your life? Mary laughed softly. Yes. There was a brief silence. He's kind, Mama. Does he respect you? He does. Does he respect your values and your faith? Mary thought of Ji-hoon standing beside her through every trial they had faced. Yes, she answered with confidence. Then, her mother said warmly, I'd like to meet the young man who has brought that smile back to your voice. A few days later, Mary shared the conversation with Ji-hoon. He smiled. I'd be honored to meet your family. Mary looked surprised. You would. Of course. He took her hand. If we're building a future together, then your family matters to me. Mary's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since leaving Nigeria, she truly believed she had found not just success in Korea, but a place where her heart belonged. Neither of them knew that the next journey would take them thousands of kilometers away, to Nigeria, where Ji-hoon would meet Mary's family, experience her culture, and face challenges no business deal could ever prepare him for. 3 weeks later, Lee Ji-hoon's private jet landed at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. It was his first visit to Nigeria. As he stepped onto the tarmac, he paused for a moment and looked around with curiosity. So this is Nigeria, he said with a smile. Mary laughed. Welcome to my home. From Abuja, they continued their journey to Mary's hometown, where her parents and relatives had been eagerly waiting for days. As their vehicle entered the neighborhood, children ran alongside it, waving excitedly. Neighbors peered through gates and windows. Word had spread quickly that Mary had returned from South Korea, and she had brought a special guest. The car stopped in front of her family home. Before Mary could open the door, her mother hurried outside. "My daughter." Mary embraced her tightly. "I've missed you so much, Mama." Her father walked over with a broad smile and welcomed Ji-hoon with a warm handshake. "You are welcome to our home, my son." Ji-hoon bowed respectfully before shaking his hand. "Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here." Mary's father appreciated the gesture. Inside the house, the dining table was filled with traditional Nigerian dishes prepared especially for the occasion. Jollof rice, fried rice, grilled chicken, suya, moi, pounded yam, egusi soup, and fresh fruit covered the table. Ji-hoon looked at the feast with amazement. "I've never seen so much food prepared for me." Mary's mother smiled. "In our family, we welcome guests with our best." Everyone laughed. During the meal, Ji-hoon tried pounded yam for the first time. After a few amusing attempts, Mary quietly showed him how to eat it properly. The room filled with laughter. Even Ji-hoon couldn't stop smiling. That evening, as the family gathered outside under the cool night sky, Mary's father spoke. "Ji-hoon." "Yes, sir." When a man travels across the world to meet a woman's family, it tells us his intentions are serious. Ji-hoon looked at Mary before answering. "They are." He turned back to her parents. "I love your daughter." The yard became completely silent. "I didn't come to Nigeria only to introduce myself." He took a slow breath. "I came to ask for your blessing to marry Mary." Mary's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to ask that night. Her mother covered her mouth in surprise. Her father remained quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You have shown our daughter respect." He looked at Mary. "And she has never sounded happier than she does now." He extended his hand. "You have our blessing." Mary could no longer hold back her tears. She embraced both of her parents before turning to Ji-hoon. He smiled warmly. Their families had just taken the first step toward becoming one. As laughter, prayers, and celebration filled the evening, no one noticed an elderly neighbor watching from across the street. She smiled gently and whispered, "Sometimes, God writes the most beautiful love stories between people who come from completely different worlds." And for Mary and Ji-hoon, their greatest chapter was only just beginning. 6 months later, excitement filled both Nigeria and South Korea. Friends, relatives, and colleagues eagerly awaited the wedding of Mary and Lee Ji-hoon. It would not be an ordinary ceremony. It would be a celebration of two cultures, two families, and two hearts brought together by honesty, faith, and love. The first celebration took place in Nigeria. Mary looked radiant in her traditional attire, surrounded by her family and closest friends. Music filled the air as guests danced, laughed, and celebrated late into the evening. Ji-hoon and his family embraced the traditions with respect and joy. Although some customs were new to them, they participated wholeheartedly, guided by Mary's parents and relatives. Grandmother Sun-young smiled throughout the celebration. "Love grows stronger," she said, "when families choose to understand one another." A week later, the second ceremony was held in Seoul. The venue overlooked the Han River, decorated with elegant white flowers and soft golden lights. Mary walked down the aisle with quiet confidence. Ji-hoon waited for her with tears of happiness in his eyes. When she reached him, he gently took her hands. "I never imagined that losing a briefcase would lead me to finding the love of my life," he whispered. Mary smiled. "And I never imagined that returning it would change my future forever." The guests laughed softly. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the hall erupted in applause. Ji-hoon and Mary embraced as flower petals floated through the air. Months passed. Mary continued her work at Hanul Group, eventually leading the company's African Partnerships division. Her dedication helped build lasting business relationships between South Korea and several African countries. Ji-hoon remained chairman, but those closest to him noticed that success was no longer measured only by profits. He invested more in employee welfare, scholarships, and community development, inspired by Mary's compassion and integrity. Grandmother Sun-young often welcomed both families to her home, where Korean and Nigerian dishes were served side by side. The house that had once felt quiet was now filled with laughter. One evening, Mary and Ji-hoon returned to Bampo Bridge, the place where everything had begun. They stood by the same railing where Mary had found the briefcase. Jihoon smiled. One small act of honesty changed both our lives. Mary nodded. It reminds me that we never know how one good decision can shape the future. They watched the sunset over the Han River in peaceful silence. As the lights of Seoul reflected on the water, Jihoon gently took Mary's hand. Together they walked forward, not just as husband and wife, but as partners, friends, and a family united across continents. Thank you for watching Afrokorea Seoul Stories. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and family. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite moment, and join us again for another unforgettable African-Korean love story. Until next time, take care, and may kindness always lead you to unexpected blessings.